We're going live.
Yep. Hello, everybody. My name's Hiranda Misra. I'm the chairman and CEO of GMEX Group, a global trading technology firm in the exchange space. And it's my pleasure to moderate a panel on capital markets, digital assets, and ESG with 4IR, the fourth industrial revolution, blockchain, and society 5.0. We have some great panelists with us today, and we'll just get them to briefly introduce themselves and what they are doing in this space, and then we'll move into what will be a really exciting discussion. So Jessica, over to you.
Thank you very much, Hiranda, for having me today. So I'm Jessica Naga. I'm a barrister. I specialize in fintech. I have co-founded the Digital Partners Network, and we provide fintech-focused financial services in the Pan-African region. I head a law firm headquartered in Mauritius. I am the director of a hybrid exchange in the Seychelles, and I'm very happy to be here tonight. I mean, tonight for me might be early for some of you.
I always say many jobs, but one salary, or not even a salary, right? When you're
total entrepreneur.
So welcome on board. And Professor Lisa Shaw, over to you in the early hours of that kind of outer Brisbane morning. Well, not even morning yet.
Yeah, it's morning. It's actually nearly 3 a.m. in the morning, but my body is saying it's UK time, so that's okay. But yeah, hi everyone. My role is broadly a transformational strategist in the area of digital technology, and generally I'm just given a whiteboard to say solve this problem, and generally it's one of the world's greatest in that space. But I'm currently director and project lead for Africa Agritech out of the UK, and another digital resilience company called Pinar Digital Edge, and Mind Shifting, which is my initiative, which is to bring together education, business and frontier technologies. So lots happening.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. And Pinar, over to you, or Dr. Pinar Emirdag, should I say.
Oh, wow.
I haven't called you doctor in a while, right?
No, I don't hear that often at all. And thank you for the opportunity. Really, I mean, such an interesting panel, actually. It's very global. I am very excited already. And hello from London. And so my name is Pinar Emirdag. I work at JP Morgan. I manage a team called Digital Client Service Team, and within markets operations, within our digital platform and services business. And what we are doing is every day servicing our clients, but also at the same time building a digital organization altogether. So it's not only me, all my team, and it's an interesting challenge. It's quite entrepreneurial as well. Thank you.
No, wonderful. Thank you, Pinar. And Xavier, over to you and the great work you're doing, both practically and in terms of writing as well.
Yeah. Thank you for the invitation. It's a nice pleasure to participate at this great panel. My name is Xavier Gomez. I am the founder and chief operating officer of Invio. Invio is a market intelligence platform dedicated to financial services. My company offers a SaaS solution that leverage proprietary big data analytics, natural language analysis, NLP technologies to help financial institutions drive their digital transformation and strategy. In fact, we leverage the power of data contextualization by using advanced technology to process and classify millions of unstructured data coming from anywhere, from video and text.
No, fascinating. And, so we've got some interesting representation from the client service side, from the agri-tech side, and so impact to the legal and digital asset side, and then, everything you're doing in artificial intelligence. So between us all, I think we can cover those broad topic areas. So diving into the first question, a long one, but starting with you, Lisa. I mean, the use of digital currencies and alternative forms of digital assets, we really see them propagate. But how are we going to see kind of smart contract-driven cross-border exchange between them, their exchange with other goods and services, so that we can reduce cost and friction and increase efficiency in the wider market as well?
Yeah, look, I think one of the things that's profound that's come out of 2020 is the exact area. So, you know, a year ago, we were still in some ways hitting our head against a brick wall in terms of the uptake of the potentials of digital currencies and tokenized assets, particularly for the African market and emerging nations. And I think one of the things that, you know, is just gobsmacked me is the fact that in 2020, African youth have become the greatest adopters of cryptocurrency against all the odds. They have, you know, 11.9% internet usage. They have 600 million people that lack electricity, and yet they've still got the highest uptake of cryptocurrencies. So that's telling you there's a demand and a need. And I think it's also telling you, and as you know, I'm doing a lot of work in Africa in terms of some of the challenges they have. So, you know, come September, we have basically the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement virtually came into force. The challenge that we've still got is we've got 54 nations of Africa that can't trade with each other, let alone trade with the rest of the world. And these digital currencies and tokenized assets have the potential to do that, particularly when you look at, you know, the ECOWAS, you know, organisations, 15, you know, central banks, 15 nations of Africa. And for 20 years, they've been trying to get a single currency in that space. And, you know, just to give you some definite examples, one of the businesses that's been established and I've been working with since, you know, the COVID-19, since March, is a company called PureVisionLearning.global. And it's taking education online for Africa, but starting in Nigeria. The first challenge they had is they're using a UK tech company and they can't get payments to the UK without significant, you know, inflationary challenges and costs. If we had a seamless ability to have a means of transfer from those nations to either within Africa or to the UK, to Europe, the cost savings are massive, and we could unlock trillions of dollars in potential in those markets. So, you know, I think it's quite profound. And I think 2020, a lot of things that have come out of 2020 is positive, and this is one of them, is the uptake of digital currencies and the ability for assets to be tokenized, particularly in the global trade and supply chain, you know, market in that space.
No, very good point. And you know, Jessica, given, you know, your extensive work with your kind of Pan-African law firm and also structuring and you know, you're setting up structures on behalf of clients, and you're heavily involved in the digital asset space now as well with the work that you're doing. You know, what do you see as some of the key challenges there? And obviously, you know, I know stable coins and looking at exchange controls in different jurisdictions, it's something you've been looking at, and, you know, seamless asset transfer. So any key observations given your day-to-day experience in this space?
I think my point will be a practical one. I mean, the biggest problem that I currently see in my legal practice is banking for fintech and tech companies. To say the least, it is difficult and time-consuming to open bank accounts. And even when one has a bank account, especially on this side of the world, Africa, you know, where most local banks rely heavily on large European, US correspondent banks, the ongoing due diligence requests are incredibly taxing. I have clients having to use the law firm to respond to queries from banks. And the cost, bank charges and stuff like this are prohibitively high on this side because they're in dollars and stuff like this, and it's very, very expensive. I mean, there is no doubt that cryptocurrencies such as, I don't know, Bitcoin, USDT, etc., are challenging the current financial model. I am not surprised that there has been adoption on this side of the world. I mean, it has filled a gap for many of the unbanked with a smartphone and limited internet connectivity. People can use cryptocurrencies to send and receive money in a fast, secure, relatively cheap way. So simplistically, for me, digital currencies will continue to be used extensively in Africa, and I'm hoping that we'll soon see a central bank digital currency that will come in and help temper some of the negatives of a private one. I mean, I would hope to see both being allowed to coexist. I think in your question, you talked as well about, digital assets, such as tokenized securities. I mean, it's great. They will move real time. And I think they will change a lot of things for SMEs, especially in Africa, trying to raise capital. They will allow multiple listings in multiple jurisdictions, access to different types of investors. So I think all in all, I'm looking at all of these changes very positively in a practical sense for my clients in the region.
No, thank you, Jessica. Some good insights. And Pinar, would you like to add anything to that as well? Obviously it's an area end-to-end client servicing standpoint that JP Morgan has been taking the lead on. And we've also seen a lot of interest with the banks into Africa from a digitalization standpoint as well. Given the growth of M-Pesa and now more recently, more defined kind of digital asset plays as well.
Okay, let me actually set my domain very carefully because it's quite important, but I think they are connected. Or at least I can somehow find a way to connect them always. But the area that I am focusing on is really like traditional, like markets, as institutional markets as we know them. But there is a reason that I am quite excited about the digital client service as well, because as you, so everything that's being talked about here is really moving towards the future, which already has been happening for a while. It's not really new. It's a new type of financial services where things move in a much more streamlined way. Data has a completely new meaning, and we manage our capital risk, all those topics in a much more, let's call it like more platform-like way, and all those kind of things are happening. The same goes for also clients as well, right? I mean, the society, the changes, the needs of the clients are becoming like really converging. And so, for example, even though my domain always have been more institutional markets, I mean, it's very clear that for a long time, the difference between institutional and retail are converging, or B2B or B2C are really beginning to converge. So and there are reasons for that, right? So for me, the interest is, when all of these things, everything is changing, clearly client service has to change as well, or at least maybe even like we should have a concept that's actually like much more digital, and that's kind of the starting point. But in terms of the like B2B and B2C, like all these changing trends and why they're all quite interesting. Like if you think about this, if our clients, like just some very simple examples, the clients in the institutional market used to be quite fragmented. Like decision makers used to be very different than the people that we normally deal with day to day in other parts of the organizations, right? So within the client's side, the decision makers and the clients are connecting internally as well. So your institutional clients are becoming much more like, they are converging to more like decision making is really like decision makers, and the people that we service every day are really becoming very much connected because of the same very similar reasons. And the products are also, already this is not, we don't even really need to go that far, but even with the more digital markets, the advisory businesses, like all the things that used to happen has been happening for a while. The products are becoming much more accessible. I mean, the asset managers are finding new distribution channels, and frankly, it can be digital or not, anything really. And so that also means that as the products are becoming more digital, that's also like much more, it's connecting B2B to B2C much more. And then the thing that I am really very much focused on these days is like, okay, so if we are doing this, we also need to be thinking about digital way of thinking, like building services, which is very client-centric. Like we talk about client experience a lot, and we should be probably measuring client experience in a way that is much more, like using the techniques that are more used in retail space. And so like, how do we actually make more data-driven decisions, be much more pointed around what we are doing with our clients? Are they like what the experience really is like? And then that should be the lead, the core of everything we do, building products and services and so forth. So that is the lens I think that we are beginning to learn from the more B2C markets. What I am really wondering, frankly, is I'm sure that there are other things that we can teach other side as well, because I keep on hearing about the experience from all the tech firms and the retail experience, which is amazing, seriously, how they think. But I think we have very interesting things in the, and I'm really exploring, I don't know yet, but in the B2B space that we have done very, very successfully. So I think the combination could be quite powerful, and I think it's convergence, simply. Yeah.
No, a couple of fascinating points. Yeah, just a couple of. Yeah. Just a couple of things I wanted to pick on, and I'll give you your chance, Lisa. But just for Xavier, that Pinar brought up, one is a convergence of B2B and B2C, and we're certainly seeing that. I mean, whether it's in the crypto space or more widely as well, because PayPal going into cryptocurrencies. On the one hand, you've got DBS Bank in Singapore now launching digital asset exchange and custody. But Pinar raised a very interesting point, Xavier, on data-driven decisions. And certainly you've had a lot of experience here, and we know that with anything, whether it's smart contracts or whether it's anything to do with this construct and measuring KPIs, other things, data is key. So it'd be interesting to talk about some of the things that you're seeing in this area, both in terms of what you're working on and more widely. And then I know from that perspective, then we'll hand back to Lisa, because she's had a lot of experience now with something that she's working on the data side, with this very construct, that's very financial inclusion orientated as well. So Xavier, over to you on data, all things data.
Yes, thank you for the question. We have today a big issue with the data. This is a bias of artificial intelligence. We have to tackle this problem, and to illustrate what I said, I'm pretty sure you see on the last days the issue with Timnit Gebru. She worked for Google, and Gebru is known for her work on algorithmic bias, especially in facial recognition technology. And in 2018, she co-authored a paper with Joy Bulamwini that showed the error in rates for identifying darker skinned people were much higher than error rates. And just the example of a high-level woman in artificial intelligence, in particular in data, with Google, one of the best leaders of the world, just show you the big problem we have to tackle, and the consequences of this paper. It's just a paper. She's the greatest specialist of the world. She has been fired because she just wrote the truth, what everybody knows in data. And can you imagine the impact in the financial sector? Is just huge. And today, the challenging is first the conversion, the conversion with artificial intelligence and the blockchain. Today, we have a problem of bias with artificial intelligence, as you know. You have a lot of paper on that. Secondly, we have also an issue, but it's a question of times, with the development of blockchain in the economy and the concrete application in order to be mainstream. We plan this development, the real development, around 2025 or 2030. And if you want to see the combination of the both, in particular with the smart contract, we have to resolve and tackle the bias in artificial intelligence. And this is normal because today the coding of machine learning has been made by human, and human is not perfect. They are not a machine. And now, as a second point, as I mentioned, is the blockchain. The blockchain is not very mainstream for people. We have to start with B2B, in particular in finance. We have a clear application on that, in particular in fraud, in custody, for the capital market. In trade finance, we see a lot of tests, in particular in JP Morgan, HSBC, Societe Generale. It was a very successful test. And I think the first step will be between financial services before to have a concrete application to the citizen. And in particular, the first step will be tackle the fraud.
Yeah, and actually, Lisa, obviously you want to comment on some of the points that Pinar was making, and also, just to touch upon a point, Lisa, comment on that Xavier raises. I mean, obviously everyone speaks about AI, but he's absolutely right. It's only as good as the data that drives it, and otherwise it can be a case of garbage in, garbage out, right? And again, with some of the work that you're doing, I know the data challenge is central to a lot of your thoughts as well. So would you like to comment on that and anything else that our panelists have raised?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it's interesting. When I was doing some research and things that I wanted to do for today, I literally, the same thing, garbage in, garbage out. But data alone is just code unless it has value to its end user. And unless we put the right information in to give the right answer out the other end, then it's valueless. And you're absolutely right, Xavier. We can instrumentally put bias in, and we actually are, and that's also impacting women globally. So that's a huge issue. But one point I just wanted to mention about Pinar, and I think this is important in this conversation, is really it's heading towards ecosystems. Is that one thing that I know that Hiranda and I are very keen on, is that digital currencies and blockchain and cryptocurrencies and tokenizing assets is not segregating and saying that the mainstream banking market shouldn't exist. And I think you hit the nail on the head in the sense that customer services have to improve. It has to become customer centric. So one of the things that we've focused on, for example, in our work in Africa, is that yes, we can put in seamless methods and processes of exchange so that we can get people that are using multiple currencies to transfer using tokenized assets and custodial services and so forth. But when they get back into their own home country, whether it be Nigeria and they're using Naira, or South Africa and Rand, or the UK and GDP, they're still going to engage in the mainstream market and still going to engage with banks. What we have to do is connect that ecosystem in a seamless way. And one of the things that, I think, the other thing that I think that is profound when we're talking about countries like Africa and in England, for example, Nigeria alone spends $5.1 billion printing money. Now, that's a lot of money that's wasted printing physical money when we don't need to. That money could go into customer services to create a great experiences for an economy that's a cash economy and a feature phone economy. So that money could be being driven through the banking system that's currently not. And so that's the ecosystem that we're playing in. To move to Xavier's point about data, look, it's profound. So one of the projects I know that Hiranda's done is a project in agri-tech in Malawi. And what they found was that they could deliver some amazing services, increase productivity, farm production, growth in economy for those farmers and revenue by 32%. The minute that got to that point, it stopped, it stagnated. And one of the reasons it stagnated is that there was no ability for the women farm holders to make an autonomous decision based on biased data subsets that were available, and we're still feeding those data subsets into AI. So the challenge that we've focused on in the last 6 to 10 months, and we've just lodged a patent for, is to actually take data ingestion at edge. And of course, we're also challenged with GDPR compliance because blockchains aren't particularly nice and don't play friendly with GDPR compliance allegedly. We've said, what if we do something different? What if we take that data at edge, we ingest it, we turn it into a smart metric that a smart protocol, a smart contract can use, but there's no actual data on the blockchain. It's just a metric. To do that, it means that we have to go to all the stakeholders. We have to go to the mainstream banks. We have to go to the trade finance companies. We have to go to those who are in the ecosystem and say, what data is it that you want? How do we actually produce the answers, the metrics, the actual quality answers that you need for an autonomous, unbiased decision to be made in a trustless environment? For us, that means for women, particularly women farm holders on the African continent, which, by the way, is 80% of the agricultural sector. If we can do that, we can create an unbiased, autonomous decision with no actual data on a blockchain, only the metric, and the metrics are agreed before we actually start the process. It means for the first time we can have women having decisions about credit, about land ownership and those sorts of assets for the first time without bias. But it does come to the endpoints of our data and the ecosystem in which we're playing. And that's a critical point we're in. And so it's an exciting time. 2021 is just going to be amazing. We're really wanting to challenge that space.
Really interesting. And, what I would say is that there's more women on this panel than males. So you can afford to be biased in that regard as well, But you raised a couple of points, and just to touch upon what Jessica raised earlier, you're effectively saying, and there's a lot of naivety because you've got the world of digital assets on the one hand, and you've got traditional finance, on the other hand, that's been around for hundreds of thousands of years as well, some of those decentralized finance guys kind of ignore the fact that you do need traditional rails and traditional financial markets. So again, personally, I see the world being hybrid, where the old world and new world have to coexist, albeit, we're seeing more fragmentation in many ways that we've got to knit together, given multiple blockchains and multiple legacy networks as well. Jessica, you raised the point that you're involved in a hybrid exchange project, obviously that we've looked at in the Seychelles, and then from a legal standpoint, obviously we know that there's no global standards around legal and compliance as far as digital assets are concerned. There's lots of debate, and obviously there's common standards around FATF and the like around KYC ML. But what are you seeing here, and what are some of the positive changes happening in terms of how we make that kind of cross-border movement of those assets and cross-border investment more seamless from a digital asset standpoint? Because I know you're doing a lot of work in that regard, especially with kind of hybrid constructs.
Yes, I mean, I as a lawyer, I don't really believe in aligning jurisdiction regulatory frameworks in multiple jurisdictions as a starting point. What I think works better is allowing both systems to coexist. So not to wait for a change of law to start doing something, but to let both of them coexist until you have a critical mass where people see the real benefits of the new system, and it just takes over. And then in the meantime, you would have tried and tested a lot of things, seen a lot of things that you need to tweak. And then it's organic and it's more sustainable. This is exactly what happened on something as simple as posts and emails for me. And this is what I think would be the best way for the changes to happen. I believe ahead of cross-jurisdictional kind of legislative or regulatory framework alignment, hybrid or digital exchange will look at working together by aligning listing rules, for example, which is easier while working within existing domestic legal frameworks. And then once the benefits are felt of lower cost, easier to raise capital, easier to move tokens around, it will be natural that we will see regional alignments. I'm seeing regional alignments already in a couple of African countries where the regulators that I work with are already talking to each other. So I'm very positive that we will see changes in the near future. But on the other hand, on a practical level, I quite like the differences between domestic regulatory frameworks, because I think it's not all negative. It allows, when you do multiple listings of tokenized assets, for example, for investors to play on the differentials, and this can encourage arbitrage and cause assets to be more liquid. So I'm talking more on a practical basis here, and I think we might see positives based on the difference in the laws and regulations of the different jurisdictions.
And Pinar, this is a really interesting point, because you're running a global team. A LinkedIn advert popped up on my LinkedIn recently, and you're hiring in Jersey as well. I'm not applying for the job, and so but you're running a global organization across all time zones. I don't know when you sleep, but Lisa certainly does. But we know that client service, especially on the B2B side, to a large extent, hasn't been as automated in the past as it should be. On the retail side, you've kind of been forced to on fintech because it's a numbers game, and there are so many clients you're servicing. But my experience of working in the B2B side within financial markets, there's lots and lots of systems, and it's very difficult for them to talk to each other. So what's some of the work that you're doing there? Because obviously those metrics and data across multiple systems, harmonizing those, and we know that obviously open banking, as much as we'd like it to be a reality, dealing with those legacy challenges and as an issue, and even managing documents and the way that we deal with clients. Obviously, have you found challenges there, and how you're addressing them? And given the pandemic now, I guess you've been forced to, and it'd be interesting to hear how that's accelerated some of those initiatives as well.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question would be about word piece or something.
Crystal ball.
Okay. So let me let me try to explain some of them. Right. Thank you by the way, plug for hiring. We're looking for good people, and think that's great. And so it is indeed it's an interesting challenge. And let me explain to you how we are thinking about it. So first of all, there are three things, right? We have this team already is actually servicing clients. So that's actually incredible, interesting advantage, because I think that always these kind of things are the important thing is understanding what happens day to day. And what do people really think about, talk about, and it's not only day to day, like in which day, in which time of the year, and all that kind of with triggered with what kind of events, and the knowledge and the expertise of the team is just remarkable, right? So that's an amazing thing, place to start with. And then idea then is to how do you actually transform and build, and so that whole digital side of things. So we kind of think about digital as 4 components, because there are many. I mean, it's very, I know, no brainer for you, but it's actually important to anchor some of the thinking. So it's data, intelligence, which is the type of topics that we are talking about are actually quite important. And all what we do with data, all the insights and so forth. And of course, the platforms and people. People are really very, very important. Like when people talk about digital, I think it depends on who you talk to, but it's very possible that you may be missing the people side. But I think that it's actually the wrapper around everything. And so then you start, doing the typical thing. We just kind of try to unpack the areas of, which data, which metric, which platform. And you start from the things that you have access and identify the things that you really need to build. And it's a journey. So the type of maybe to give you a little bit more concrete results. There are certain things that are foundational, and around the type of data that you need to have, like who are you talking to, all those kind of things, right? And but there are also things that are that we can so we can actually, the things that are not foundational, we can work on them later. And then what you try to do is we start also, it's a culture change as well, right? So we have been working with the AI teams, data science teams in this journey, and then and also it's about training. It's also about everybody, the individuals feeling empowered to be part of this journey. There are things around be more data savvy. Points around AI and bias. I think that it's very much connected to people actually knowing all these issues, these topics as well. So it's really teaching. So there are a number of things. It's a number of things that needs to come together. I am not claiming that I know all the roots, and but it's a journey, right? And yes, we are going it.
Someone's going to be arrested, I think. I can hear a siren in the background. But Xavier, a couple of points there that are very, very interesting, because I know you cited the Google example previously, and we know that organizations like Google and Amazon, as part of client service and also to, propagate what they're doing on the sales side. I mean, they're increasingly using a lot of these tools and getting smarter at it. Obviously, we've been trying to catch up from a financial services standpoint. And of course, there's always, Pinar and I have seen this with our numerous years in capital markets, and we see it today as well in some quarters. I was on a call recently where the electronic business and the voice business are clashing with each other, even though it's mutually beneficial for them to work together. So and everyone talks about, well, actually, you'll lose jobs and people will be out of roles, but really, I personally see those roles being redefined so that those jobs become better and just a different kind of job and more opportunity created. So for you, how do you see, Pinar mentioned data intelligence and people fitting together. What are your observations there in that respect? And also, today, obviously the large corporations have been utilizing their technological assets and advancing them to use the data and see some in society. I'm not saying it's personally my view. You've cited that there's too much control of the data with these organizations and they're becoming bigger with more control. How do we balance that for Society 5.0 so that we can all benefit from it as well? So a couple of angles there that your analytics, data, and AI experience could lend itself to.
Yeah. First of all, on my proposition, I speak with a lot of banks, tier 1 level in Europe today, and the biggest problems as a bank today is the organization of their own data inside the company, because every day, every action of a relationship manager, bankers, a clerk create data with interaction with a customer, and in fact, before to use external data, they have to organize the data inside the company, and this is a big challenge. Of course, you have the good player and the bad player, and you can see on the organization of each bank the action taken when you see a function of chief data officer. Okay, it's a little bit buzzword marketing, but it shows you the direction and what kind of power this chief data officer has. First of all, one, to realize, organize the data inside the company, and after create a partnership in order to move forward with some key fintech on different area. And what I can share with you, it's a different trend I see at the moment, in particular in investment banking. I see a lot of cash in terms of investment in blockchain and big data. Clearly, blockchain and big data are two technologies in full swing, but they are also two complementary technologies. And according a lot of consulting firms, brands adopting burgeoning blockchain technology will benefit the most, and banks will be able to reduce fraudulent activities, phishing attacks, ensure secure payments. One of the other things that fintech can support banks, fintech need to bring their attention to this artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data analytics. And as a whole, this can help banks in addressing their key challenge like cost reduction and scrutinize risky transaction. Clearly, this will help banks to get a better hold on their offering, reduce fraud, automate trading process, ensure secure payment processing, and so on. The other thing fintech need to bring their attention more closely to this data analytics, AI and machine learning, because clearly this is the pain point for the bank. This is the reason why I talk about a partnership, a collaboration between banks and fintech. And as you know, AI is already helping many address the key pressure point, reduce cost and monitor risk on transaction. And clearly, according to autonomous consulting firms, a financial research firm, AI is projected to reduce operating cost by 20% around 2030. For the bank at the moment is just huge. Because as you know, we have a bank has a lot of pressure with negative interest rate, a raising of request regulatory, with MiFID II, FATCA, Solvency II, all these nice things. I decided to leave as a banker to create my own company. But I'm sure Jessica make money on that.
Oh, she loves the word FATCA, you know.
I love it. All of it. Everything you said. Great.
This is the reason why I decided to jump on innovation. And yes, it's clearly a big challenge. And of course, I'm pretty sure a financial institution, financial services will succeed to transform themselves with the help of fintech. And I see one concept I learned in MIT in Boston. This is a co-opetition. On one side, you will get a clear competition between fintech and banks and some financial services. And the other side, you will get collaboration, the co-opetition concept. And at the end of the day, I strongly believe the financial institution such as the HSBC, JP Morgan, and so on will succeed if they take the time and put the money on the table to transform themselves with the support of this kind of company, in particular on blockchain, because blockchain will open a lot of new business revenue for the bank if they are opportunists, clearly.
But Pinar now will send an email to her fintech strategic investment side. Only joking. But Lisa, that raises a couple of interesting points as well. Just thinking, because obviously doing a lot of work, that's aligned to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and everyone talks about, fintech for good. But we know that, with Society 5.0, you've got things like healthcare, financial inclusion. You've spoken about women's empowerment as well. But even simple things. When you spoke about the agri-tech projects, when farmers' incomes went up, we saw that they could afford more, so the standard of living went up, and in turn, children's nutrition went up because they could eat better as well. So, with all these things in mind, how can we, and with that, the use of technology as well, a lot of these people are unbanked. So how do we create an internet of people rather than an internet of things, that genuinely empowers people and increases their incomes? Because there's a lot of buzzwords, there's a lot of initiatives that are announced, but I don't always see them following through in Africa, and that's the importance, I guess, now in the next phase of our journey.
Look, I often use this word, blockchain. It's not spelt too hard, and it's not spelt Bitcoin. And I think we need to decouple those. And I think it's without a doubt is a foundational technology like the internet. But I think we've actually had a philosophical shift, and I think this is where it really leads so well into an internet of people. We've gone really from internet of things, which is how do we connect? And yes, we've connected the virtual and the physical world without a doubt. But blockchain has now taken us to a space of what do we value? So a lot of my research that I've been doing, particularly in the African space, is really around the philosophy of blockchain. It's not about how it works, not about the technologies. What does it mean? What does trust mean? What does trustless mean? What is the philosophy of blockchain? You know, what's its axiology, its epistemology, all of those things. Because it's changing our behaviour and the way we think and the way we invest and so forth. And I regularly give this example because it's a very tangible example to people who don't understand the potentials of blockchain to connect to fintech, to connect to being banked. We've got 2 billion people in the world who are still unbanked and are not connected. So one of the things that is extraordinary, and if blockchain did nothing else other than this, it's still profound. It can and has the potential to give people an identity, a self-sovereign digital identity. If they get an identity for the first time, they can be banked. They can actually connect to the traditional banking system. That can take, for example, a fragmented Africa and connect it for the first time. So it's an engine of inclusion. And it can take those unbanked people for the first time to give them an education. Because without a bank account, without banking, guess what? You can't get an education either. So to understand the potentials of blockchain, fintech, and all of the things that we're talking about, the internet of things, everything is actually a moot point unless you can get an education. So with an identity, you can get banked. You can get banked, you can get an education, and we can turn fragmented into thinkers and doers and an engine of inclusion. So one of the extraordinary things that this technology has is that capacity. But I do want to say, you know, it is powered by data as well. And I'm going to throw this word in, and everybody knows that I very rarely have a conversation about anything to do with blockchain unless I say education. Because unless we can have a national and international strategy from the top down, bottom up, on what the potentials of blockchain are, we will not truly advance its potentials. So education has to be actually key in this conversation, every single layer. We've got decision makers and elected decision makers making fundamental decisions around the uses of this technology out of fear, driven of fear of legacy issues. And as Xavier said, you know, unless we start to work together and understand this, we can't actually, you know, adopt its potentials for agri-tech, for financial inclusion, for global trade, for, you know, all of those sorts of things. So we've moved to what do we value, and really blockchain, it's about trust. That's the thing that we value the most. We've gone from connectedness to valuing trust, and we need to educate decision makers on that at a huge level. So, you know, we've got financial institutions who are still reeling in fear and coiling back and pushing back, rather than saying, how do we overcome some of the challenges? ED, GDPR and data and blockchain. Is it doable? Absolutely it is, but we need to educate on that space.
It's a very good point, because on one of our initiatives, we have a gentleman called Steve Round, who is former chairman of The Big Issue. But, you know, he founded the Change Account in the UK, but he also solved the problem of providing bank accounts for homeless people in the UK who didn't have an address, because, you know, some of the challenges being cited in Africa is, yes, but, you know, there's no house number 167 or anything like that, or a postcode, right? But, you know, these are some of the problems we've actually solved, you know, for different reasons in the West as well. And now the technology is far more advanced for us to lend itself to some of these things in Africa. You know, you and I have spoken about kind of geomapping and some of the other aspects with that as well. Now, you know, just throwing a couple of questions out to the wider panel. You know, again, there's so many different technologies out there. I mean, this is a really exciting time, you know, because, you know, we've spoken about Internet of Things, AI, blockchain, you know, quantum computing. You know, there's going to be more and more technology convergence. And it'd be good to get the panel's views, you know, as we head into the last 10 minutes about what the key trends are that you see for 2021. You know, and again, there's areas like agri-tech that, you know, Lisa, you're involved in, reg tech, legal tech, Jessica, and then, you know, fintech with Xavier, and, you know, fintech client service more broadly, Pinar. So Jessica, you know, over to you. I know you've done a lot of work on the reg tech side and legal tech side. And to me, actually, the legal profession is in need of change. No disrespect to the legal profession. You mentioned email. And now we've gone to instant messaging, and before that there was paper. But when you talk about legal contracts, it's almost like, yes, send us the email, and then we'll look at the agreement, and then we'll wait for the paper agreement before we action anything else. And change control is a nightmare, right? So to me, someone can really empower this and make a lot of money at the same time. Maybe it's you.
I think we shouldn't mix everything. I think the complex legal transactions, you still need the lawyers involved because there are risks. But at the lower end of the more simple one, just like you have a lot of people unbanked, there are many, many people who cannot access legal advice, and they think some transactions are very small, and they rent their house, they sell a car, they're little things, but they can hugely affect your life. You can keep a tenant for a year and can't get rid of him. So I have worked a long time in London, and I came into Africa having a different training and a different exposure, and saw a different world, and I really wanted to do things differently. So I think legal tech is amazing. So we are currently creating a little legal tech company to address basics, contracts, very, very cheap, but will give access to a lot of people in Africa to this. So for selling your car, for renting your house, for having a nanny. I mean, I've got a lot of kids, and I know it's very hard. These are things that stresses women out, and then on the other side there is RegTech, which I'm very passionate about. I think financial services regulated is much better, but the problem is it's a nightmare to get licenses. It's expensive, it's time consuming, it's complex. So a lot of people who would want to get licenses don't do it because of the complexity, when it could actually, multiply their business by 10 in terms of valuation. They just don't do it. So I think RegTech and legal tech, if adopted, and I'm always into doing small, trying, and it works, and it's like self-promotion of the product. So I'm more for this kind of implementation of new technology. I think it will democratize access to these very necessary services to a wider base. So that's my bet on it.
No, very, very interesting. And Pinar, from your perspective, given some of the great work that you're now doing, leading on from what you've done, key trends in 2021, if you had a crystal ball. I don't know where this year's. I guess it's gone in a lockdown fashion for us. Jessica's lucky in Mauritius. We're jealous, but
he's very jealous about that.
Okay, so not sure there are lots of new key trends I can say, but there are two things. One of them is actually, I realized that I didn't answer the second part of your question, but it might be connected to the COVID side. The COVID experience is actually like how I'm going to connect this to this topic. It in a very people-driven business. We have seen how resilient people can be. Without dropping the client service day to day, literally finding a way, changing passing the work to each other and organizing their time. It was amazing what I have seen in last year, honestly. But the important thing there is the resilience comes with the combination is very powerful. So you not complete the full tech or full people. Tech plus people actually is a quite interesting combination. So I think resilience is to me it's quite important to really think about how do we make technology more useful for people to build further resilience, as opposed to making complete everything machine driven or other way around as well, right? So I think that's something to take on. The other one is, I'm quite interested in digital client service and client-centric work, and And I think it's actually quite foundational for everyone, frankly, not only like also fintechs as well, because like being an entrepreneur is kind of hard at the beginning to be too thoughtful about like all the journeys and everything else, because you just kind of go at it. And so maybe this whole client service topic could be something interesting to dig deeper.
No, it's interesting. One observation for me, when the lawyers and the bankers say, they're also interested in social impact and making a little less money in the short term. I know we're heading towards Society 5.0 in some way, shape, or form, right? Which leads us nicely to you, Xavier. You're at the forefront of some really interesting initiatives, and you write about them regularly. And looking forward to 2021. In your world, given you come from the financial services side now into what you're doing, and you're using data to drive it, what do you see as key trends? Where should JP Morgan and others be investing?
Yes, more or less, I feel with algorithm, 5 trends shaping the futures of financial industry. First of all is invisible payments. Invisible payments, as you know, takes a physical payments method such as cash, debit, and credit cards completely out of the equation, creating a convenient and a speedy experience. The demand of cashless transactions in this pandemic, its economy is expected to create more opportunities for digital wallet operators. The transactions that are digitally linked will not just help to boost transaction, but will also help the industry in collecting data. This data can then be used to offer new services, so creating new revenue streams, providing unbundled offers, and building cost-effective setup for business to grow. The second point will be communication and consumer education. As more and more customers get on digital board, fintechs will have to focus on building trust and consumer engagement. This is the same for banks, especially given the time when cybersecurity is extremely vulnerable. To be critical and to stay ahead of the competition than other fintech brands, it is necessary to focus on the security along with making the procedure simple for consumers. Communication is one of the major key ways to drive engagement with customers. And while the digital payment process might not be new for some segment of consumers, it is entirely a new process for another segment of people. So it becomes the brand's responsibility to build transparency in communication and make the consumer aware of all the activities in a simple way, so they can understand fraudulent activity beforehand. The third is one platform for multiple services. One thing a consumer prefers the most will be multiple services across one platform. And the big example is WeChat in China. Clearly, you have one app, and you can make a shopping, you can make a saving, you can lend money, you can transfer money, and you can chat with your best friend, you can book a restaurant. This is a perfect example, one platform, multiple services. Mm-hmm. Many fintech brands have already rolled out this process of offering multiple services across one app, but the increase in offering of robust solution through powerful API integration will add on. In coming months, consumers who need banking services are likely to turn to those financial players who can offer convenience and ease of transactions that is entirely safe and secure.
Yeah, and Xavier, just another thing, and the final two trends, because I know we've got 2 minutes left, and I just want to get Lisa's view on this.
Oh, yeah, and to finish, I strongly support what Jessica said about the regulation. Clearly, regulation in financial services and for the other sectors with impacted by the technology will be very important regulation in data and so on. And what I believe, just to finish, I believe on two countries with a big adoption of fintech solution and digital transformation. This is a more or less emerging market. This is China and India.
Great.
And I will finish.
Over to you, Lisa, on predictions for next year, and then the two countries you're placing your bet on.
Yeah, I'm placing mine on Nigeria and Japan and UK, because UK's got a huge opportunity post-Brexit, I think, being the nexus of technology. But I think one of the things that I'm going to pick up on is I'm renowned globally for being the connector. So everything that you've all said is absolutely 100% on target. And I think something that Xavier just said a minute ago is one platform. There has to be an ability to connect all the different technology systems that we have, and that's where the work that I'm working on basically trust as a service, but also risk as a service, because nearly everything that we're talking about at some point is connected to risk. Somebody making an assessment of they don't want an unwanted outcome to occur, and that's risk, and that's where blockchain technology has an incredible capacity. So that connects RegTech, it connects FinTech, it connects EdTech, it connects financial services and so forth. So I think that's my prediction, is designed ecosystem thinking that's going to bring all of this together. And I can use just one very quick example out of the UK I'm working on at the moment, is digitising high streets. If we can for the first time connect high streets in one centralised platform, we can actually profoundly have them grow as a collective group. And I think globally that's where we are heading in that space. I say Africa, I say Japan, because Japan is the most ultra-age nation in the world, and I think they have the greatest benefit to gain from society moving forward into the internet of people.
So just finally, your two predictions, Jessica, and then over to Pinar, on which nations will embrace Society 5.0 the fastest or most successfully.
So my reasoned one would be China. My dream one would be Mauritius. So I said a dream one. It's a small country. It can be do what Singapore has done if it implements the right rules. You don't need very much, but to implement the technology is out there. You need to choose the ones that are working and implement them. And I'm hopeful that things can happen fast here. So.
And last but not least, over to you. We've got China on too. 2 points. It's like the Eurovision Song Contest, in many ways, but outside of Europe.
Yeah, I will just leave it at that, right? It's I do think that entrepreneurial, like where you have more entrepreneurs and creative thinkers, and plus like solid infrastructure and knowing the rules of the game or not. This is the infrastructure, I think, and creativity is good combination usually.
Yeah, you see, Pinar is very diplomatic. Her role is
global.
I
just realized that.
Her role is global. She has to keep many countries and people in many societies happy, right? Despite JP Morgan being a US bank. But it's been a wonderful panel. I'd like to thank you all. It'll be amazing to do this next face to face as well. But it's great that having you all on board. And, look forward to following up with you all individually on the great projects and great work that you're all doing. And thank you all for participating as well.
Thank you, Miranda.
Thank you.
Thanks, Miranda.
Nice.
See ya.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I think we're out.
We're still on air, I think, but you can leave the studio as well. So now.
Just got to figure out how to do that.
Okay.